Welcome back to another episode of Rebel Driver's Garage. I am kind of wedged in a corner of my garage here because I am working on the Impala, but really I'm working on my 400 small block from BluePrint and the T-56 6-speed. I'm replacing the clutch, and I'm replacing it with a McLeod RXT twin disc clutch, and this is how you do it. Follow along. As you can see, I have my 400 engine already out. This is a 400 Power Adder engine from BluePrint Engines. There is the American Powertrain T-56 6-speed. Both of those were working fine. I burned up the clutch when I was on race week earlier this summer, so I am replacing the clutch. What I decided with, after talking with McLeod, I'm going to replace it with this, an RXT twin disc. This is 11-inch clutch, and so they call it a Street Twin, I believe, and that is the actual part number 6921-07. And so what is it? It's an actually two. It's actually a 2-disc clutch. So here's the pressure plate, right? You take the pressure plate off. Try to do this one-handed. There is one disc. Set this down here. Oops, sorry. And then you take off the second disc, and there's what they call, I guess they call a mid plate. And then the first disc, which is the one that goes against the flywheel. Now I'll show you how I know all this, because McLeod really makes it easy. They have nice, easy to read instructions, right? And they also make it dummy proof by what's all written on the parts, as you will see here in a few moments. This is a 30-pound steel flywheel. There's a block plate behind the flywheel that goes to the QuickTime scatter shield. And I can't tell you how many times I have put a flywheel on only to forget the plate. In this case, the flywheel's on. This is an SFI rated one, I guess, too. This car's too slow for needing that just yet, but hopefully it'll be fast enough in the future. Why you're asking here is the screwdriver shoved through here. This is so I can torque the bolts to 65 foot-pounds. The flywheel bolts to 65 foot-pounds, which is the correct torque raise spec for a small block Chevy. And with no spark plugs in the engine, it would roll over pretty easily. So I use this to torque them. Torque in a crisscross pattern like that. Go over it a couple of times, and I'll show you. So I got the torque wrench set up at 65 foot-pounds, and I'm just gonna, like that. Now I've already torqued these. I'm just gonna show you how it's done. That's all. Maybe I'll move the camera over on this side so you're not getting my elbow in your face. How's that look? Does that look pretty good? How about we move it there? There we go. So, and so, you can see how the screwdriver here is preventing the crank from rotating, so you can actually get a good torque reading. You don't want to jerk on it. You just want to, like so. So I already did this off camera, but I'm going back over it just so you can see. There's also the thing to think about when you're doing flywheel bolts. Now it's okay to use reused flywheel bolts. They're not a torque to spec. Some applications, the flywheel bolts don't have washers. Some do. my best advice to you is use them the way they come. So say you order a package of flywheel bolts from ARP and they don't have washers, don't add to them. Also, do not use like hardware store bolts. The main reason why is the heads on these bolts are pretty flat where they don't have a lot of height. And the reason being is most clutch discs have a spring that goes in. They have springs in them that are in here. And if you have regular hardware store bolts, then the head of the bolt may hit the springs on your clutch and destroy your clutch, and the clutch won't work right anyways. So now let's get back to the clutch install. Now that they're ready. Now the other thing you want to do before you start putting your clutch and stuff on is take some brake clean, parts cleaner, carb cleaner works too, lacquer thinner, hose it off, and make sure you get all the grease off of it. You don't want your greasy fingerprints on there because that'll contaminate the clutch material, especially if you're running like a stock organic clutch. Now the first thing we're going to do is we have the bottom disc. How do we know it's the bottom? Because McLeod is so nice to tell you it's the bottom disc. And it also tells you which side goes towards the flywheel. Isn't that nice? Like I say, they kind of dummy-proof these. This is a pilot tool that came with the clutch kit, which was very nice of them. The second piece is, I call this a mid plate. I don't know what else to call it. Oops. And I'm just dropping it, and I'm flipping it over, and I'm dropping all the washers. So let me collect all the washers I just dropped. They have tiny little thin washers, which I imagine are spec'd out for giving you the correct position, depth between your pieces. And in my application here, there's actually two on each stud. There's two washers on each stud. Okay, next up we need to get out our flywheel bolts. Now these are specific flywheel bolts. There's a washer. The washer's kind of stuck on this one. You can reuse these. They're not torqued to spec, but they are specific because they're shouldered. So yeah, they're shouldered bolt. So the shoulder depth is because it goes through the mid plate here, or if you have a single disc, it'll go, and the shoulder will be taken up by the depth of the flywheel, the clutch piece here. And this one here has multiple bolt holes on it, as you can see. And before I put it on, I'm going to take my brake clean and wipe this one off as well. I'm just going to hose it off real fast here. You can see how it's got multiple bolt holes on it, multiple bolt hole patterns. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide it on here like this. Try to figure out where all the bolt holes line up. There you go. As you can see, now it's lining up with the middle ones. With the 6 bolts here. And stay. I am going to grab my Loctite red. I use Loctite red. You can probably use blue too. I'm going to use Loctite red on it. So all you need to do is put a little bit, like a drop like that. And I'm going to put a drop on all 6 bolts before I go any farther. And then I'm going to start putting in the bolts, Start putting them in by hand first. Then I'm going to do this by hand. And I'm just going to snug this plate up. Now these are like, all I'm doing is running the bolts down. I'm not really putting any torque on them. That way just the plate's held on and it's not going to go anywhere. That one feels kind of tight. That one might still have some, that bolt hole might still have some Loctite in it from the old bolts. Okay, so the next step is to torque all these down. Well, when you do torque this down, the clutch disc will still turn in here freely because it's not really putting pressure on the clutch disc yet. So, and because these are 3/8 bolts, they recommend 35 foot-pounds of torque on these bolts. That's their recommendation. They call this an adapter ring. I call it a mid-plate thing, but anyhow. Okay. I'm going pretty slow on this. You could, and the reason being is try not to get the engine to start rotating. And I'm going to go around twice just to be on the safe side. We need to take this out for a second, and we need to get the second clutch disc, which this is the second clutch disc. It says top, and it also tells you flywheel side, so you can't screw it up and put it on backwards unless you're blind or you're not really paying attention to what you're doing. It's a little bit touchier to get two discs lined up correctly. And then we put the pressure plate on. Now they mark it so you can't, they mark these for you. You see how it's got a paint stripe here and the paint stripe goes here. The reason being is you want this upper edge, see how it's got see how it's got this cutout here where it goes up and down, and they have these torque straps. Well, it's got to go over these on here, so if you have it clocked the wrong way, the lower part will be hitting these and it won't go on at all. Actually, it probably won't even go on. So, to make it easy for you, McLeod just tells you to line up all the paint stripes, and then you and then they give you 6 flat washers, which I'm dropping, 6 flat washers, 6 lock washers, and 6 nuts. So, flat washer, lock washer, and nut. Okay? Just going to put all these on real quick. Now, this is where you gotta, I'm going to tighten these down just by, they also say not to use any Loctite or thread sealer of any kind or on the studs or the nuts. Now I'm going to just kind of get these going down with my hand. Just want to make sure that this thing is nice and even. As you tighten this, obviously, it's going to be harder and harder to just turn. See, I can't turn the clutch disc anymore. But it's hard to see in there, but you can see the edge. Oops, knocking stuff over. The edge of the clutch disc should be pretty close to being even with the outer edge of the pressure plate there. See? And that's how the pressure plate gives you room for the torque straps. See? For that, if you don't have these lined up, obviously it won't go on because it'll hit this. So make sure you have it correctly, and then you can see the painted stripe really closely there. Okay? I am just going to play around with this a little bit to make sure I have it even. This is a lot harder to do when the engine's still in the car and you're lying on your back underneath of it. Now once you get one of these even close to snug, the clutch won't turn anymore. See, but you want to be able to pull this in and out nice and easy to pilot. And I'm just going to go around. What I should do is do this in a star pattern. And all I'm doing is kind of snugging it down using an extension here. As far as I can go with doing it this way. And every time I snug one down, I'm going back to double check that the pilot bearing tool goes in and out nice and easy. Okay. See that? Alrighty, and then we break out our torque wrench again, which is still at 35 foot-pounds, and start running these down closer to 35. Now you're going to be able to go move it a lot farther than just what you can with your hand, especially when you're using a half-inch torque wrench like this. So. And they want you to tighten these down nice and slow in a star pattern. And if you're watching carefully here, you'll notice as I tighten these down, the fingers start to flatten out. So, see how the fingers nice and flatten out a little bit as you go? I'm going to continue my work my way around. It's one of those jobs that you just kind of got to take your time and be patient. Sure, there's probably faster ways of doing it. I know guys that'll zip these down a little bit with their little quarter drive impacts or whatever, but I prefer to do it by hand, mainly because you can't feel nothing if something's going wrong with. You can't really feel that something's going wrong with an impact. If you're cross-threading a nut or something. Okay. You see, I feel like I bottomed out there, so I'm just going to go around and make sure I'm bottomed out. Yep. This is something you can't feel with an impact wrench. I'm sorry, I'm turning the engine away from you. Now, double checking. Still okay. Obviously you want to, that's correct, so this slides in and out just nice and easy like it's supposed to. Take that out, and as you can see now, turn it a little bit this way. The fingers used to be, before I started tightening the pressure plate down, the fingers used to be higher than the level of this ring here. Now they're actually below it. And I believe there's a measurement we need to look at. And what they're saying is that all the fingers should be at or below this ring here. If they are not, then something's not right. The clutch, the assembly is not flat against the surface. And if it isn't, then you probably wouldn't be able to, if it wasn't flat against the surface, you probably wouldn't be able to do this. So, especially with two discs. So, anyway, this is, now it's all assembled. And now I got some measuring to do for the hydraulic clutch throwout bearing that I'm using on this car. Make sure all those measurements are correct as well. So, wasn't hard at all, was it? I mean, it's a twin disc clutch. They rate this at 1,000 horsepower. So it was super simple to install, wasn't it? You don't have to be a rocket scientist. Hell, McLeod makes it easy for you. I mean, they even tell you what to do. Even without the instructions, it's pretty self-explanatory because they actually hand write on all the parts, what goes where, and how they go on. Isn't that simple? I mean, how could you not do it correctly? So don't have to think yourself that you can't do this stuff yourself and save yourself a lot of time and money. I hope you like this. If you have any questions or comments, just hit the comment side. If you like this kind of videos, subscribe. I'll be doing more stuff with the Impala there, and we're going to be putting this engine and that 6-speed back in the car. So thanks for watching, and have a nice evening.